is Joseph Robinette Biden, AKA Sleepy Joe, for continuing to enforce Title 42, like the story we talked about earlier, deporting people seeking asylum without a hearing or guaranteeing them their rights. It was a Trump administration policy that leading up to the election, they were campaigning against. They were saying, you have to go out vote for the Democrats because of kids in cages. But I believe the Biden administration has used this policy to deport about 600,000 asylum seekers, refugee seekers, immigrants, whereas during Trump's presidency, it was around 400,000. So the Biden administration has ramped it up while also lying through their teeth about the reasons why. So for those reasons, he's got to go in the trash.
Very well chosen. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. Again, that just points me out that like when people were starting to complain under Trump about like open borders and Democrats, I just go like, Obama deported like over 10 million people. And Biden's back and he's on track, you know what, to just deport a ton of folks. So it's all fake on all sides when everyone's signaling as to what they think is the virtue that they are supporting. I agree with you. Just say, hey, I'm just like Trump. I'm just like Trump on this. Or be a decent human being. Choice is yours. Well chosen. I'm gonna go with, for my garbage person this week, General Michael Flynn, reinforcing that just because you're a general doesn't mean you're good at stuff. Here is what he said about vaccines and salad dressing.
I mean, I gotta put, somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing or salads. Have you seen this?
Yes.
Have you seen it? I mean, I'm thinking to myself, this is the bizarro world, right? This is definitely the bizarro world. So there's the seriousness of what this professional realized he was doing wrong, and he's now, he's found a new way. And then there's just the laughability on the other extreme that these people are seriously thinking about how to impose their will on us in our society, and it's
take away your freedom of choice. They know better.
So it's going to be in your salad dressing. Just know that. Probably in your French dressing, because France is also bad. I prefer freedom dressing, just bringing back all those lazy ass things. This is one of those things where you like, do I have to look it up? Is there an actual thread of truth to what he's saying? Apparently, the fact-checking site Snopes found that Michael Flynn's rant might have been an indirect reference to an ongoing preliminary study about growing produce that could contain mRNA measles, mumps, rubella. No, mRNA vaccine material without needing to be deep frozen. And essentially it's happening at the University of Riverside, where they're gonna look into whether or not they can do something like this in the future, where instead of getting a shot, you could eat something that could deliver immune capability, immunity boosts. But he goes on that show, which is just a Zoom call with writing on the side so that he can say, oh my God, you're gonna listen to me? Toddler in a suit, like that other dude in the top corner just looked like a child wearing a suit. And if you open the jacket, there's like 3 kids on each other's shoulders. That's what it was like. Guys, just because there's a study happening doesn't mean it's actually gonna happen. If you are afraid of stuff in your food that laboratories have put there, I don't think there's gonna be any conservatives speaking up about it. A lot of them typically are like, listen, if it can make the food more robust, I don't care if it kills people as long as the profit margins are increased. So all of it, there's not a single leg to stand on. We are rapidly running out of time. So what did you as the audience vote for as your garbage person of the week? Let's take a look at the results in the community tab. This happens every week on the Damage Reports YouTube channel. Oh my God, I gotta make other people go away so I can read this. Okay, with 6% of the vote, Governor Tate Reeves for a complete lack of leadership during COVID. and then basically trying to make a stupid joke that maybe if people, took after him, they would do better. Michael Flynn only got 11%. You're telling me I'm an idiot for claiming that there are vaccines snuck into salad dressing. John Eastman came in, then the Texas restaurant owners for throwing out customers for wearing masks. Then John Eastman for writing a memo justifying stealing of the election. And then Ted Cruz is your garbage person of the week for pretending he doesn't know how racist Texas laws are. You heard about that yesterday on the show. Thank you all so much. Ravana, thank
All right, welcome. It's indisputable. I'm your host, Richey. We got a lot on the agenda. In the bullpen today, we have Charlie Kirk. Yep, we're going to play my debate with Charlie Kirk. Now, let me tell you how this worked out. We debated for 1 hour and 40 minutes, okay? They put 1 hour of it, they edited it down to 1 hour. You will get to see that 1 hour debate. The full unedited debate will be on my podcast. You don't want to miss it. You do not want to miss that. You want to make sure you download the podcast, and here's why. They took out some parts that really made Charlie not look great, but it's fine. I understand. I was in enemy territory, so to speak. All right, I went to Turning Point USA. This was in hot ass Phoenix, Arizona. It was 107 degrees. I'm talking about inside of that debate room. All right, I brought that fire. So make sure you download the full debate on the podcast. Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. That's the podcast. Acast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And like the podcast. Give us 5 stars. Follow us, all right? Also breaking down news of the day. My big homie Wosny Lambre hosts Wosny 10 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesdays, twitch.tv/TYT, host of Woke Bros and writer at The Ringer, will join me in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, my first story, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, here it is.
This is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real. The Green New Deal, surprise, serves China and China only. You can go ahead and put number 1 up. So today,
Okay, this is a simple meme. You can find it on the internet, but hey, listen, it's real. Green New Deal, communist China, those are facts, okay? So I get the game now, Marjorie Taylor Greene. If we find a meme, we are going to just say the meme makes it a fact. So I can play that game. Here's a meme I got for you. Found it on the internet. It must be true. All right, that's you in a KKK outfit. And that's you having the KKK hood taken off of your head. It's a meme, so according to your linear logic, it must be true. I actually feel bad for the meme guy. Like literally there's a guy putting up memes. All of that college education, and this is what he does. He puts up memes for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Think about the planning that went into this. And this is why I bring this to your attention. I'm going to talk about the merits of her proclamation in a moment. Somebody sat in her office, maybe a group of people, and listen to this woman say, hey guys, I need this meme to be a presentation in the United States Congress. Who's going to do this? Well, FedEx probably, maybe Office Depot. This is what they are doing with their taxpayer funded positions. Making damn posters of memes on the internet. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Georgia, unfortunately, used a Scooby-doo meme to try and criticize the Green New Deal on Wednesday, sparking an endless stream of mockery online. This is why she does it. She's not equipped to be a policymaker. She is not in the policymaking position. Even though she's elected, she doesn't know how to create policy, build coalitions, get legislation passed. So what does she do? She defaults back to this ridiculous optical illusion of her actually serving the public or the red meat being given to her base. The meme has these 2 images. You see those images. Let me be very clear about the Green New Deal. Moving to 100% energy means, clean energy means more jobs, a healthier environment, and far lower electric cost compared to continued reliance upon fossil fuels. Studies have shown that the technology already exists to achieve 100% clean energy by 2030. And we can speed up the transition by making polluters pay for the damage they've caused, starting with a robust carbon-free program. The Green New Deal is not only a major step towards ending unemployment for good, but also a tool to fight the corporate takeover of our democracy and exploitation of poor and people of color. Woz, you saw this, man. I mean, it's a meme. It has to be true, right?
Absolutely. We all know everything on the internet is facts. We all know that. We've known that since we were doing the dial-up days, Dr. Richey. Everything we see on the internet is true. But I think what you seen, you hit it right on the head, is the result of the Republican Party is no longer a party that takes part in governance. That's not anything that they're interested in. I think the reason why you see stuff like, why they get all worked up over the border, why they get all worked up about critical race theory, why they get all worked up about all of the culture war nonsense that we see on our TV screens every day, is because they're not interested in governance. Like Mitch McConnell doesn't even come out and say, look, this is why we oppose Joe Biden's infrastructure bill. He doesn't even pay lip service to stuff like, saddling our kids with great debt or nonsense about inflation. He doesn't even bother with that stuff. It's just like, we don't govern. And the reason why for this is that, honestly, sadly, they've already won, right? They've already deregulated everything to the point where there are no regulations. Corporations pay no taxes. Obviously, the corporate interests control every single part of life here in America. They've destroyed all of the labor unions, so there's no power in labor. They've won every single battle, so they don't have anything to fight for anymore. They just come out and they do nonsense like this. Back in the days, you would see Ronald Reagan be like, yo, trickle down, it's gonna rain money on the rest of us. We're gonna cut taxes, it's gonna be great. Never mind that it's been proven, debunked to be completely ridiculous as policy, but they don't even bother with that anymore. So this is what you see memes.
That's right, and these people are highly celebrated within the Republican voter ranks. They love Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she continues to fundraise all across the United States. Let me go to this next story. A black man in Missouri already pinned by cops. Another cop still puts a dog on him. Here's the footage. Makes my blood boil. You clearly see this man was subdued. You clearly see multiple officers at the scene. You clearly see that the cop who arrived with the K9 wanted this to happen. He wanted to put this dog on this black body. Make no mistake about it. This was his intent. This is what he preferred. And no other cop did a damn thing. They backed away. You had the situation under control. There was no need to do this. Let me give you some background to this story. This is out of Missouri. Woodson Terrace officers were dispatched around 7:18 a.m. Monday to Woodson Road, where a caller said a man had broken into a business there. Police wrote in a statement on Facebook. Police said the man appeared to be on drugs, threatened officers, and tried to walk away into morning rush hour traffic just south of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, despite police asking him to stop. Police placed him under arrest. but officer said he would not place his hands behind his back. So they told the man that if he did not comply, a nearby police dog would be released, according to the statement. The man was transported by ambulance to an area hospital for his injuries. Police said the man was found with a substance suspected to be methamphetamines. He was released pending application of warrants. St. Louis County prosecuting attorney Wesley Bell vowed his office would make a thorough review of the arrest, though he declined to comment further on an ongoing investigation. But let me bring your attention to a police K9 expert. There's a guy named Michael Gould. He called the footage problematic, also saying the fact of the matter is it's a human reflex response. You can't have an 80-pound dog puncturing your skin and be compliant. It's virtually impossible. So the only time I saw resistance of arrest or apprehension is when the dog was biting his body. Was thoughts?
Like you, I just saw that for the first time, and obviously it's extremely upsetting. And it makes me think about a lot of the rhetoric that came out of the summer of 2020 about defund the police, abolish the police, et cetera, et cetera. How about something just more simple, like hold these fools accountable with just the regular laws that we have in place right now? Like, you sick a dog on somebody, obviously sick the dog on him, right? Like he wasn't lunging at anybody, he's leaning on a car, there's 2 other cops there. Just, dude, make these dudes face the music on stuff that's on the books. This guy has to be reprimanded, if not fired. Like, you can't tell me this is effective policing, that this isn't just egregious abuse of power. Like, there's no other way to describe this guy's behavior. And I'm interested to see what happens to this guy.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second part of that is, if you live in this community and you watch the cops do this to this dude for what they claim is simple possession, how do you have any trust or faith within that institution that they're gonna treat you humanely or fairly? How can anybody have any of that trust? And what I always say about the cops is, when they come into a neighborhood and they behave all ridiculously, the first thing they say is, well, look at the crime, look at this. Of course we have to treat people like this way. We don't know who's who. How can people look at the cops and think they're gonna treat me fairly?
It creates an us and them environment, and it further continues to erode the trust factor necessary for community policing, if that is even possible anymore. But who's doing it? It's the cops. The cops have a duty to uphold the law, protect and serve, not to do things like this. Let me also bring everyone's attention to a district attorney, an elected DA, has been charged with rape, strangulation, a bunch of other stuff, okay? Let's put up a picture of this DA. Republican out of Somerset County. This is in Pennsylvania. His name is Jeffrey Lynn Thomas. This Republican ran a campaign, tough on crime. No hug a thug programs here. That's him. That's the guy. He has now been charged with rape. Let me give you the background. The Somerset County District Attorney was arrested Wednesday and charged with raping and physically assaulting a female acquaintance. Pennsylvania State Police said he faces rape, strangulation, criminal trespass, and other charges following the incident in the Windber on Saturday night. In Windber on Saturday night. That's according to state police. The DA was arraigned Wednesday night. Now get this. He is being held on a $5,000 bail. Now that's an easy bail. He makes that no problem. $5,000 bail in the county system. I want to remind you of the charges: rape, strangulation, criminal trespass, and other charges. $5,000. The arrest came after a day of state police investigated the alleged attack. Police said Mr. Thomas entered the home of a female acquaintance and refused to leave after being told to get out the house. The DA is then said to have sexually and physically assaulted the woman. In a statement, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro called the charges against Thomas deeply disturbing and stated, "It is a reminder that no one is above the law." I have a few issues here. Obviously, many times when people run these tough on something campaigns, they're trying to overcompensate for something. It is a big flash in the pan and look at this and don't look at what I'm doing behind the scenes. But he is charged, so this is at current state an allegation. But do you know how tough it is to arrest a sitting damn DA? That must have been some pretty compelling evidence that the state police were able to actually put their hands on. He has been arrested, he's charged with these crimes, and look at what the criminal justice system does. They bend their rules. Did they break the law? No, the judge did not break the law, but the judge definitely bent the law, because who in the hell gets a $5,000 bail for rape and strangulation in America other than a white DA? Was?
Yeah, obviously anytime crime is visited upon somebody, it's horrible, and we don't want that under any context in our society. But when it's being carried out by those who are tasked, elected to protect and serve the public, it's twice as horrible, if not more than that. And another thing that what we mentioned about the cops and the erosion of trust in institutions, I think what you're seeing with stuff like people not wanting to be vaccinated, that's a byproduct of a lack of trust in the institutions that are tasked with running our lives, right? And I think these things have a carryover effect. It's not just that this guy is now a blight on the DA's office. You now make it so that it's hard for the citizenry to trust that very institution. So it has these ripple effects, man. It's awful. And I would just hope that the victim is getting the help and the resources that they need to recover from something as horrific as a rape.
Yeah, horrific. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable, stick and stay.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
we'll see. Poor
Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone?
Okay, sorry, I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me to Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the two people here said that their moms are both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Kirk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it, we will settle it.
She's cute. I didn't say that about Laura Ingraham.
Scandal at TYT. Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good boss.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire.
Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always changed this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT Network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. I'll see you there.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
All right, welcome back. We got a lot of comments. Before I get to those comments, I want to remind you, we have a special bullpen today, XL bullpen, because you will get the 1 hour version of my debate with Charlie Kirk. We actually debated for 1 hour and 40 minutes. The full debate will be available on podcast, and you can get Indisputable on podcast, Acast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from, okay? So make sure that will be available right after the show. We're gonna make sure that full debate is available to you. For those of you who watch it live, you'll at least get that 1 hour version. Still very, very engaging, okay? Also, we've got Michael Moore joining us right here on Indisputable Monday, Oscar-winning filmmaker, host of Rumble with Michael Moore podcast. I'm looking forward to that. And Galaxy Brain with Ben Carollo. That's right after Indisputable. Catch that 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time. That is a Twitch exclusive, twitch.tv/TYT. And don't forget, I Wish a Karen Wood merchandise. People are taking pictures with their I Wish a Karen Wood shirts and tagging me on social media. I love it. Also, we got the I Won't Stop tees as well. Beautiful, great addition to the family, okay? And if you wear one and the first person who gets offended, that's Karen. That's your Karen. These shirts are literally able to call a Karen out just by wearing the shirt. All right, let me read some of these comments. Make you see the silver-haired dragon. This is a simple meme from a simple-minded simpleton. Yeah. I am Sock. I'm worried for TYT for this debate. YouTube and Twitch have strong policies of not hosting child abuse videos. Y'all are too much. Kelly O'Hara, preemptive cheerleading. This is my poet. Richey, here's our guy. He comes with truth, no need to lie. Charlie Kirk is such a creep. Watch him as he squirms and weeps. He has no chance. No, he's all spin. That's why Dr. Richey wins. That is so sweet. Thank you for that. YouTube super chat about Marge. Forbeszilla, as a Scooby-Doo fan, I got my tattoo, old school VHSs and my VHS player. And I'm super offended that she touched anything related to my favorite show. I was upset too. I'm sure she broke like 30 copyright rules by doing that presentation. Wouldn't that be dope? Like whoever owns the rights to that to come out with a statement right now, tell her to cease all activity connected to Scooby-Doo. All right, what we got? Bernie the Kiwi Dragon. Let that meme set the tone. Had Greene stayed on any House committee, they would pump out nothing but Scooby-Doo policies. Gabby Mathis, and Greene got the flag wrong. It was Russian, not Chinese. Yeah. Remember, she has a meme guide, all right, about the police dog incident. Damn, stop using dogs to maul people. I mean, is that really complex? You know, there are police agencies who, by policy, will not do that move. And they are still policing. Jeffrey Richey Dragon, police dogs should be used for finding bombs, and that's it. Agreed, 100%. 100% agreed. All right, Twitch, Charlie debate. Mac_Bane, grab the popcorn, watch Charlie Kirk get taken apart like a rusty engine block. You guys are so creative. Progressive, Canuck. It's almost like the cops were like, how dare he not resist? I want to sick my dog on him, so he made it happen. Yeah, that is what it looked like. Republican DA, East Village Boy says, what the hell, Pennsylvania? We need less DAs like Thomas and more like Larry Krasner. Larry is the freaking man.
He's the best.
Larry is the man, all right? Ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off. I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
You guys are breaking the law. GA38, okay. GA39 states.
You need to step outside, please.
Why?
Because you have to. I'm asking you to leave the premises at this time, okay?
Are you with the DISD or the city?
If you're not complying with the law,
are you with the DISD?
I'm asking you to leave the property.
I'm asking you to identify yourself. Are you? So you're
DISD.
So you're not a city police officer.
Please step outside, please.
And you're kicking me out.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Officer, may I ask who gave that order for you to have her escort outside?
It's the district, sir.
It's the district.
Because the district trumps the governor.
Please step outside, ma'am.
The district.
We can argue. We can discuss it outside, okay?
The district trumps the governor.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying? Is that the district trumps? You're saying the district trumps the governor?
I'm just asking you, ma'am. Please step outside.
Did you not swear an oath to protect?
Please step outside. I'll ask you again.
Did you not swear an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States of America? I want to know what ordinance states that you can kick me out.
I'm giving you a criminal trespass, ma'am. Okay? This is a warning, okay?
So now you're disallowing a parent to go inside. And under the public meetings ordinance.
My name is Sergeant Ramirez over the Dallas ISD Police Department. You've been asked to leave the property.
This is nice.
If you do not leave the property,
then
you will be arrested for criminal trespass.
Really?
Which is a Class B misdemeanor.
So you're telling me that it's
Class B misdemeanor.
That the GA39 is going to be ignored.
And up to 6 months confinement in county jail or both fine.
Or you could
leave the property.
Man, if she had darker skin, I promise you, he would not have actually started reading the whole statute. I have never seen a police officer literally read an entire statutory code to an individual who is committing a crime. There's more. This is not it. But I wanted to bring your attention to how nice, for lack of a better word, this cop is being at this district meeting that has a mask protocol. Here's more of the video.
We could
you leave the property?
Call the sheriffs, which
yes,
trumps,
will you leave the property?
Which trumps
will you leave the property?
Your guidance.
Will you leave the property?
Under what ordinance? Under
criminal trespass warning.
How is it if the governor is
criminal trespass, ma'am? You're criminal trespassing.
The governor, GA38, GA39 clearly states that you cannot, that public institutions that are funded cannot refuse.
Yes, we can. Please leave the property. This is not your property. I'm a representative of the department.
GA39
please leave the property, okay?
My confusion is.
There's no confusion, ma'am. Please leave the property.
No, there is, because the governor's already stated.
If you refuse to leave, I'll place you under arrest.
You're going to arrest me?
Yes, ma'am, for criminal trespass. For failure to leave upon request.
How can you mandate something that the GA38 and GA39?
He's not going to arrest a damn thing. He's about to read the law again. That's what he's going to do. This Karen is going to call the police on the police. She says, call the sheriff. He has more authority here. Really interesting. This is in Texas, obviously. Let me give you the law. She's citing, there's a Texas law 38 and 39. This is through executive action of the governor, Governor Abbott. Let me explain the executive order 39 that she referenced. Let's put that up on the screen. Executive order number 39 relates to prohibiting vaccine mandates and vaccine passports subject to legislative action. I got that directly from the actual executive order signed by the governor. So she's citing the wrong executive order. She also went to executive order 38. I guess she figures if I just throw a bunch of executive orders, maybe I get one right. Well, even that executive order, it says, please note, mask provisions of GA 38 are not being enforced as the result of ongoing litigation. So madam, this school district was well within their right to arrest you after they warned you multiple times, but they did not. But the audacity of Karenicity, she said, I'm about to call the police on the police.
Anytime I see the cops treating people with any level of deference or kindness, patience, I'm just like, look, I don't think that they should be body slamming this woman like they do black people. They shouldn't choke this person out like they did Eric Gardner. Like I don't believe that that's what should be happening. But I would love to see this level of deference applied across the board. Exactly. Do this to everybody. That's the answer. I think some people would be like, well, shoot, why aren't we choke slamming this woman right now? No, I don't think that's the answer. I think we should need to do this type of policing across the board, apply it to all the people of our society and not just white women.
Yeah, and it shows you that they are well aware of how to de-escalate. They understand courtesies. They can be respectful of people that are non-compliant. They can continue to negotiate even beyond a lawful command. They can do these things that others say, oh, no, they just need more training. No, they just need to equally apply their courtesies across the board. That's what they need to do. I got a treat for everybody, double dose.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off. I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life. Give me a break. Raise your bar. All you darkies, I see you. Oh, I'm watching. Guys, play the race car too much. Americans, white Americans, nothing now. We can't even have voice at all. We can't say the word Mexican without getting thrown off the goddamn plane. I said Mexican. I said she clapped her Mexican hand against my white ass.
She called everybody darkies. She said, oh, I can't say Mexican. I said she touched her Mexican hands against my white body. And you call me racist? I mean, yeah, she already caused the scene. White, black, and brown people came together in unison and gave a roaring round of applause when she was being escorted off of the airplane. And then she turns around and in order to prove that she's not racist, she calls them darkies. And then goes on to explain how she actually is racist by the context of how she used the word Mexican. And I bring this to your attention because it is a reality in our social construct in America. If you gave that woman a lie detector test right now, and you asked the question, ma'am, are you racist? She would probably pass if she says no. Because her racism is so indoctrinated and ingrained and part of her subconscious reality that it is implicit. And she believes because maybe she does not actively call people the N-word every day or do some other action, she's not in fact a racist person. Was interesting stuff here.
I guess we should be grateful that she didn't go with porch monkey or spook or one of the classic.
Well, she was going to get there. Give her more time.
Yeah, with a little bit more time. And look, I struggle with these deeply damaged people, right? To me, I just want to see her pay the consequences. Maybe throw on a no-fly list for a few years so she could feel pay the consequences of her actions. Obviously, this is repugnant behavior, and it has no place in any public space, much less something that's confined as an airplane. But it's tough when you see these damaged people just having it out in public. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, very much so. And we expose to make sure there's a mirror, a social mirror, so that we can show America what she actually looks like. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at twostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively, what do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce 1971 saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
All right, welcome back. We got a lot of comments. Before I go to those comments, let me remind you, special XL Bullpen today. My debate with Charlie Kirk will air live. This is the 1 hour version. Turning Point USA edited this down to 1 hour. I literally debated with this guy for roughly an hour and a half. We have that full debate on the podcast. So in order to get the full debate, which I highly encourage you do, you have to go to Indisputable with Dr. Richey podcast. That's Acast, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast, okay? So make sure you do that. Also, Michael Moore will be with us on Monday, okay? That's gonna be a dope show. And don't forget Galaxy Brain right after Indisputable with Ben Carollo, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific time. That's going to be really, really cool. twitch.tv/TYT. Let me read these comments. Lynn says, no matter how many times I see them, I can't believe the arrogance and entitlement of Karens. I mean, she's over there misciting the executive order, saying she's going to call the police on the police. He tells her what law she's violating. These are the people that under any other circumstance would have said, they just need to follow the law. Why are they not being compliant? Well, this wouldn't happen if he wasn't breaking the law. Same people won't put on a mask. And let me show you how ironic it is. This is a district school meeting, you're a parent. You care enough about your kid to show up to know what's going on, then care enough to put on a damn mask. You can protest it. You can say, I don't like it. You can vote in a new school board member who's anti-mask. You can do these things, but you mean to tell me you're not going to be involved in the education of your child because you refuse to put on a mask as required by that district? Okay. Jamba Gino, she wants to call the cops on the cop. That's not gonna work, right? The sheriff may have locked her up. Like I wanted to see the sheriff come there and just say, go ahead and put her in jail. Elected miscellanea. The police officer should have told that Karen who was saying it was her constitutional right not to wear a mask. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the Constitution does not guarantee you the right to be a Karen. If a cop ever does that, and listen, I think it may happen one day. If a cop ever calls someone a Karen or says you're being arrested for being a Karen, I would completely just fall out, all right? YouTube super chat, Schoolboy Karen, the Joint Collective says, she has the complexion of, for the protection, he didn't want to give her any problems. He really didn't. He didn't want any smoke with Karen at all. Airplane Karen, get the duct tape. Old Hippie says, I was brought up around white people, but never knew they were this crazy. Well, you weren't brought up around crazy white people because most of them are not like that, as you know. Donald James XXX, they should have parachutes on planes just for Karens. Nikki Nova, 08, white people have no voice but control the narrative, Karen bye. Twitch, Tim 530, and that is white privilege. Yep. Octo Squiddies, am I saying that right? Maybe. Apparently you can charge someone with a crime without yelling, stop resisting, stop resisting. Yeah. All right, okay. This is really horrific, but once again, it shows you how deep this mask thing can be for people. There's a guy, a Texas man, who went berserk after a hospital security guard said, you have to have a mask on. So what did he do? He bit through the man's thumb. That's what he did. Sir, you got to put on a mask, you're in the hospital. Response, let me bite your thumb off. The attacker's name is Chad Stalin. Let's put his picture up again. Chad Stalin's went inside of Kell West in Wichita Falls around 11:45 a.m. On Monday morning, there was a mask policy. Police said, security guards said, listen, you got to cover your face, all right? It's a precaution. It's hospital policy to wear a mask inside. Sounds right to me. I mean, yeah, there's an infectious disease. It's killing people, damaging them in their respiratory functions for life. Some bad stuff has happened. You got to put on a mask here. You may be a carrier. You got to put on a mask. The guard told this guy multiple times. But the 37-year-old Stalins, he wasn't having it. He continued walking inside the hospital, where he was confronted again by the guard, who raised his hands to prevent the other man from poking him in the face. That's when Stalins bit the guard's thumb all the way to the bone. Put his picture up again. This guy is so anti-mask that he'd rather eat your thumb than put on a mask in a hospital. Now, if you're not willing to put on a mask in a hospital, you don't give a damn about yourself nor anybody around you. You don't care about folks that have immunity issues. You don't care about nothing. This man rather literally eat a thumb than put on a mask. Stalins was arrested and charged with assault on a public servant, which is a 3rd-degree felony in that state. It's at least a second thumb-related assault for Stalins, who was convicted of assault in 2018 for grabbing a woman's thumb and bending it backward. This guy and thumbs. Woz, do you ever find it just fascinating and ironic how people who are anti-mask would rather do things that are way more inconvenient than putting on a mask in order to still not put on a mask? Like going to jail is inconvenient. That's real inconvenient.
You know, it's interesting. I'm always more fascinated by the reason given, which is always an argument about freedom and liberty and civil liberties and the constitutional rights and all of that. And I'm just like, all right, sure, maybe wearing a mask to go to Olive Garden is an infringement upon your civil liberties, I guess, but like, is it worse than the Patriot Act? I don't know, right? Like, is it worse than, when Snowden revealed what the NSA was doing to our freedoms and our privacy and the violation of those freedoms and said privacies? I don't happen to think so, but it's just so strange to me how worked up they get about this stuff. And it speaks to the right-wing media propaganda machine, just getting these people worked up to a fever pitch. Because again, they're not gonna talk about the infrastructure bill. They're not gonna talk about the Green New Deal and the merits of it, or the child tax credit, or universal pre-K and kindergarten. They're not gonna talk about that on right-wing radio and the merits of those programs. They rather talk about this, and they get people worked up.
Very well said. Let me shift gears. One of the saddest stories, this is gonna make you mad. 4-year-old black child being physically assaulted by a grown ass man at a daycare, who is the daycare teacher, the daycare worker. Let's go to the video.
As this down. You don't need to listen when I say for you. You're trying to get out of here.
Producers, I need you to get ready because I'm going back to that video. To everyone who's watching, I know it's difficult to watch. I need you to watch it. I need you to watch it, and here's why. As hard as it is for you to watch, imagine what this 4-year-old girl was going through. Now, there are 2 people who have now been charged with the crime. Not only the male, the white male who pushed this 4-year-old violently down to the ground, but the other daycare worker as well. Remember, they didn't know this would become a big story. They didn't know this recording would be out. They didn't know they would be held accountable. This is how they treat them. This is how they decided to treat a black child in their care. Now, the images are blurred because we want to protect these very young children and their identity. But I want you to pay close attention to the 1-2 combination of the daycare worker that pushed this child, the one by the door, and also the third one who should be charged as well for allowing child endangerment in this way and continuing to clap her damn hands like she didn't just see what she saw. Here it is.
And sit down. You listen, when I say for you, you're trying to get out of here.
Has not been charged. 2 of them put up their pictures, put up their mug shots, okay? Jennifer Miller and James Cialino. They have both been charged. Both with child endangerment. Both were in positions of trust with children. The incident took place on June 21st at Wild Kingdom Early Learning Center in Ohio, where daycare workers James Cialino is depicted harming an unidentified girl. That's when a seated Cialino, who is reportedly 6 feet tall and 315 damn pounds, placed both of his hands on her chest and pushed the girl to the ground. She let out a cry instantly. Miller stood by, did nothing, then closed the door and left. Both employees, who had only been there for a month, were terminated upon review of the video, which the school director, Lisa McMillian, told reporters happened the day of the incident. The video itself has all the truth it needs in it. As soon as you watch that, or as soon as you see that, you know immediately what has to be done. Good for her. She's not standing by them. Listen, we're gonna continue to follow this story because not only was it egregious, I believe it's also systemic. It's systemic. And we have the stats to prove it. Waz, we got a minute left, brother. What are your thoughts?
Look, man, this is a very important job, right? When it comes to watching kids in a daycare, it's one of the most important jobs you can do. And I respect the people who do it well and do it effectively with care and compassion. However, we're not asking this homie to teach these kids how to read or write or even color in between the lines. We're just asking you not to abuse kids. That should seem like a simple enough job. So I'm glad that the law has gotten involved and these people will be punished and reprimanded because this is child abuse, plain and simple, and they can't stand.
Yeah, let's put the picture up again. I just want people to remember what they look like by the end of the show. All right, we appreciate that. Waz, I appreciate you, brother. How can people follow you and check you out on social media?
Yeah, follow me at BIGWOS, Big Waz, on every single social media platform. And if you want to check out my work covering the NBA and pop culture over at The Ringer, me and Nando Vila, a fellow TYT contributor, we do a podcast called The Woke Bros. Go get that on every single podcast feed. And yeah, check out Wosny every single Tuesday night on the TYT Twitch stream.
Always an honor having your insights, brother. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we got more on the other side. Stick and stay, it's indisputable.
I'll predict right here for you, Chris. I think Donald Trump will leave office before his term is up. He'll be humiliated, embarrassed, and I know him. He's not going to want to lose, and he's going to run for the hills.
You got that bet all day long.
Okay, let's get after it. Now, so look, Jake has made some good predictions, and this is in good fun. I could not disagree more.
There's a little bromance between the two of them. You got that bet all day long, Janky, you. Oh, you stop. In the meantime, let's call him out on the damage.
But
I just got a Roku set. Did basically a little bit of channel surfing, and I was like, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then I turned it on, and it was John and Brett on Damage Report making fun of me.
Oh no.
So you are so busted. I even took a picture of it, okay? They're talking about my predictions. I got a new prediction for you, John Idarola.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody.
Young Turks is the largest online news network, not a big deal. We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. Fourth day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate. I gotta be honest, you know what we do? We cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair elections.
And when he told the cops that day, when they came to drag her away, and he said, if you're gonna chain her, you're gonna chain me. If you're gonna arrest her, you're gonna arrest me.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
All right, welcome back. It's indisputable. So very thankful for every single one of you. We work hard here. This team is such a remarkable team. We work hard to bring you relevant stories, to expose injustice, and to bring political truth, policy truth to the table. So I'm gonna read these comments, and then after that, you will get to see the 1 hour special I did with Charlie Kirk. We debated. Now remember, this is their edited version. I would like for you to also go right now and download the podcast. You can get Indisputable on Acast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, okay? We will put the full unedited version on the podcast, okay? Let me read some of these comments. TYT member, I Am Sock says, is casual cannibalism a symptom of COVID? I don't know about that. Something I don't know. Colorado Blue Blazer regular. Cannibal's got a cannibal. He definitely had the hangeries. Yeah, that's weird. Legacy the Silverhaired Dragon, 4 years old, not much more than a baby. Is that what it takes for an empty sack bully to feel like a real man? JFC, how pathetic an excuse of a human being is that? That's right. Textan, what the F? A kind of person, a kind of weird prison are they running there? That daycare needs to be shut down and those workers charged. Well, 2 of them have been charged. YouTube super chat, Moon Dragon, get tested for rabies. Yeah. Nicole Purple, dude, life is turning into a real American Horror Story. The hell is wrong with people? Yeah. Elisa Burdick, what is wrong with that animal? You don't harm a baby like that. Exactly. Twitter, Phoenix 32778. See, he was there to eat some sick people. Yeah. All right. And Phoenix also says, and he's effing clapping like it's a sick game. I mean, the whole clapping and not paying attention, not even concerned about the cries of a child. Anytime a baby cries around me, it moves me. You know, you want to make sure the child is okay. For you to not have any response, you have no heart, you have no soul, you have no morality, you have no values, you have nothing. And obviously they have been charged with a crime, but anyone who saw that and did nothing, we know one other employee was there, they should be charged as well. All right, here it is, my debate with Charlie Kirk.
Welcome to Debate Night, everybody. My name is Charlie Kirk. Debate is at the core of our constitutional republic. Shared ideas inspire collaboration and innovation. Debate makes way for empathy and wisdom, and it shapes our culture. America is a unique place where allowing the best ideas to win is both a means for progress and the essence of freedom. Threats to debate suffocate the air within churches and classrooms, spoil dinners amongst friends, and give unwarranted failing grades to college students and deprive American institutions of conversation. That is over, starting now on Debate Night. Here, all ideas are welcome and conversation is the point. We'll present 2 sides of an issue and let both points breathe. This isn't for the sake of winning an argument, but for exercising and thus preserving our right to free speech. America is not debatable, but ideas are. Tonight's debate tackles Fauci virus restrictions and mask mandates in schools, but the conversation can go anywhere. Tonight's special guest is host of the acclaimed show Indisputable on the Young Turks Network, as well as the Richey Morning Show, airing daily on News Talk 1380 WAOK. You may also know our guest from MSNBC, the Fox News Channel, Black News Channel, or BBC America, where he regularly stars as an analyst, providing insights on things that he calls social justice and cultural issues. He is the president of Rolling Out Magazine, which reaches over 2 million readers every single month, and his passion for building a better world for America's youth sparked the Richey Foundation, which helps improve the lives of children in at-risk communities. He's a lecturer, a professor, analyst, host, writer, and editor at large. Tonight's guest is a dynamic force, and I'm thrilled to have him here. And he's objectively a very nice person. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Richey to Debate. Hey everybody, welcome to Debate Night here at Turning Point USA headquarters. Honored to have with us today Dr. Richey, a very well-known radio talk show host in Atlanta, also a college professor, amongst many other things I'm sure I'm forgetting. And today we're going to be talking about COVID mandates, schools, masks, and so much more. The way that this conversation will go is Dr. Richey will begin with some thoughts for 2 minutes uninterrupted. I'll respond with 2 minutes uninterrupted, and we'll go back and forth in that format for about a minute each. Then we'll take about a 10-second break, or a little bit break, and then we'll just kind of have at it. And so, Dr. Richey, thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
You're about to be in trouble, Charlie. All right, here's the thing. Mask mandates in schools are 100% appropriate, and here's why. First of all, the vast majority of American voters actually support mask mandates for school teachers and for those who are inside of the school system. But let's look at what it actually does. A mask mandate, people that argue against it, they say this is an intrusion on civil liberties. But think about it. A dress code, is that an intrusion on civil liberty? A vaccination mandate, is that an intrusion on civil liberty? Let me bring you back to K through 12 education again. 100% of all public schools in the United States of America require vaccination to enter. That's your vaccine passport already in play. 92% of private institutions require a vaccine in order to attend. Let's go to the mask mandate. The mask mandate protocol is in place for the safety of students. This is based on verifiable science. 90% of those in the field of science, the field of study, they say that yes, it actually decreases the spread of COVID-19. But now you have people around this country literally, rather than throwing on the mask, they rather throw fists. They're fighting school teachers. They're fighting those that oppose them, and they are threatening to fight school board members because of a mask mandate. I have not seen this kind of activity at school board meetings over anything except for these mandates. But remember, mandates are already in place. School boards have the statutory authority to implement administrative law given to them by the states based on the construct of the 10th Amendment of the US Constitution. These school boards are well within their constitutional right and statutory authority in order to implement such a protocol. Just as they have the ability to say, here's the dress code, here's the vaccination requirement, here's the teacher credentialing requirement, and here's what it takes to pass to the next grade.
That's 2 minutes, Doctor. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Richey. So here's how to first respond. First of all, we have to ask ourselves the question, is the Chinese coronavirus or the Fauci virus a serious threat to children? That's the first question. And so Dr. Macri wrote a piece, I should say, for the Wall Street Journal, where he studied tens of thousands, it was over 40,000 children with the virus, and was not able to find one child that died from the virus that did not have underlying health conditions and that did not have some sort of immunocompromised condition. And so you look even more broadly than that. And this is from the New York Times. I just want to read this, which is annual deaths among children in the United States. Now, this is per 100,000 people. So children 5 to 14 years old have a 2.1 per 100,000 chance of dying from cancer, a 1.9 per 100,000 chance of dying from vehicle accidents, 1.5 per 100,000 to die from suicide. We'll get back to that in a second. 0.7 from homicide, 0.6 from cardiovascular disease, 0.5 from drowning, 0.3 from flu, and 0.2 from COVID. Now that's not percentage, that's per 100,000. So the question is, if children are at a greater risk of riding in a car to school, then why all of a sudden should we now mandate the masks for children? So I think we're talking about two different things, and I think we'll have a fun time going back and forth. At the unscripted part of this is, do schools have the ability and the authority, and is it a good idea? I'm going to start with whether it's a good idea, then we can get into the other one. It's an awful idea. It's bad for interaction. It's bad for childhood development. We already see the increase in mental health issues that I will go through some of the numbers associated with that, but everyone has kind of experienced that in their own way. And saying to a child who is not at considerable risk of dying from a certain virus that you must change the way you interact, I think is child abuse. And the floor is yours.
All right, you have 1 minute, Dr. Richey.
All right, so let's talk about the numbers.
Yes.
Okay. The Delta variant has changed the game in many ways, where now you have children who not only have the virus, but they are experiencing adverse reactions from the virus like never before. I take you to a place called Jackson County, Mississippi. There's a school superintendent. This guy decided to ignore all COVID-19 protocols. He says he's going to live a life that's external of the fear of the pandemic. Well, his school system, they have a 7% COVID positive rating. They've already lost a school teacher. Here's the other dynamic that people aren't considering. You think children go to school in silos? These children who can be carriers of COVID-19 can infect their social environment, such as their parents, their grandparents, other peer groups, people that their families associate with. And then it becomes an issue of the ecosystem of our safety, not just the silo of the school system.
Very good. I will respond. So I'm glad you brought up the Delta variant. So a lot of people have done at least some initial studies of the Delta variant. So according to Dr. Roberta DeBasi of the Children's National Hospital, she was asked about Ari Shapiro from National Public Radio about the Delta variant. The National Public Radio host said, wait a second, if kids under 12 are not vaccinated, is the Delta variant a significant risk? And she said, quote, children are still somewhat between 12 to 15% of all COVID cases and still 3 to 4% of all hospitalizations. And we have not seen a huge change in that, even with the Delta variant. Now, I'll add to that where the Boston Globe, not exactly, a politicized paper to the right, asked the question, is the variant more severe in children? Dr. Sharon Doran, epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center, says, no, I have not seen any peer-reviewed data or data from a reliable source to suggest that. So I would submit, doctor, that there is no data to show the Delta variant has any harsher cause. In fact, the data shows the opposite.
Let me respond, all right? So here's what we know about the Delta variant. Based on CDC directives, the Delta variant is more adversely affecting young people than it has previous with the original design. To suggest otherwise is silly, and here's why. You can go to a place like Alabama. Alabama, for the first time, they have run out of ICU beds. The Alabama leadership, governor and beyond, they have blamed this on children going to hospitals that did not go before with the original COVID virus. They're now being hospitalized like never before, and they're running out of ICU beds. And at some point this week or next week, they may run out of ICU beds. That's because of the hospitalization not only of adults, but also of children. At last count, they had over 400 children hospitalized for COVID. They had a fraction of that during the first onset of the virus.
Almost perfect timing. I got to give you credit for that. It's almost like you do radio or something. So I'll respond to this in a couple different ways, and there's a lot more to unpack once we kind of go back and forth. First, we have to ask ourselves the question, are people being hospitalized because of COVID or with COVID? Now, this is something I've been saying for quite some time, but The Atlantic, which is a publication I think we can both agree is not exactly on the right, came out with this at the end of their article. It was actually just published recently, where they asked the question, and this is the same doctor, Dr. Sharon Doran, who's an epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center from Boston, very reputable, right? So she disagrees with the CDC. She says Delta variant is not a significant risk for children, right? And we're going to talk about what do you do when you disagree, when you have competing studies? Because I think that would be an interesting discussion, where she said, quote, as we shift from cases to hospitalizations as a metric to drive policy and assess risk, we should refine the definition of hospitalization. Those patients who are there with rather than from COVID don't belong in the metric. So I would just say, doctor, when you say 400 kids are hospitalized with COVID, we don't know that's necessarily true. In fact, some say that number might be even 50 times too large. You saw you?
Okay. All right, here's the thing, Charlie, and I keep hearing people make this argument that somehow it matters that children who have an underlying health condition are the ones who are dying or being hospitalized. That doesn't matter, Charlie. The fact is that these are children, and some of these children aren't even aware if they have an underlying condition, and that's not 100% of the data. So when we continue to create this us and them narrative that somehow says, well, the only children who are dying are those that have an underlying health condition, well, hell, you can have an underlying health condition. That does not make you any less significant as it relates to a virus or the spread of a virus that's preventable. So are we having an argument about a civil liberty? Because if this is an argument about a civil liberty, then the COVID issue is a separate argument. Because you have no issue with your seatbelt mandate. You have no issue with your mandate to have a driver's license, even though you can buy a car without it. You have no issue with these other mandates, which are required for the safety of others. But you have an issue with this mandate, which we've already established that statutorily school boards have the authority to implement these mandates, and American citizens, by and large, are for the mandates in K through 12 education.
So I'll get to the civil liberties in a second. As you notice, I didn't mention it all. I'm saying this is a bad idea. Right? This is bad for children, and also it's bad for teachers, bad for an educational environment. And so I'm going to reiterate one thing. I'm not minimizing that it's children with underlying health conditions that are dying, but children with underlying health conditions have a predisposition from dying from any sort of infectious disease. And the vast majority of children in this country are healthy, which is why we frame it in that way. And so this kind of goes to this question, a couple different questions, and I would love to ask this question to you. Let's just focus on whether this is a good idea, then we could focus on whether the government has the ability. Do you think there are any downsides to children wearing masks in schools?
Hell yeah. Of course there are downsides to it. There are downsides to wearing a seatbelt. You know, a percentage of people die every year for wearing a seatbelt, but the vast majority of them have their lives saved. So let me be clear on this, Charlie.
So go ahead.
Let me be clear on this. There will always be a cause and effect relationship with any social variable change implemented in our current structural society, no matter what. Masks create changes. It is a social deviation from the norm. But when you look at the risk of a child either having severe respiratory complications forever, potentially dying, or potentially infecting their parents or grandparents, we weigh that. We weigh the same variables as it relates to vaccines that are already mandated. Brother, in the school system, the vaccines that are already mandated are very clear. Mumps,
measles, polio, rubella,
every single one of them.
But let me ask,
do you have an issue with those?
It's a totally different type of vaccine, first of all. First of all, those take 10 to 15 years on average to develop. Secondly, they've just changed the definition of a vaccine.
So you have an issue with the vaccine, not the intrusion or
well, again, we'll get to the civil liberty part of it, right? Okay. So I'm not saying that a school does not have the ability to mandate certain things. Instead, my argument is that this is detrimental to children. Their development, mental health issues, their ability to interact, and it doesn't even do what you say it's going to do. So let me just read something. That a study was done about masks that shows that if the mask is even adjusted by 3.2%, it totally invalidates any sort of efficacy of a mask.
Who did that study, Charlie?
Well, this was written by Daniel Horowitz, and it was Stephen Petty, one of the most experienced certified industrial hygienists and exposure experts in the country, has a study that he did on this. So Stephen Petty, the audience can look at it and they can have their own sort of interpretation. Now, most of the mask studies that you're probably gonna mention are done in laboratory style environments, not with 6-year-old children. And you can agree, you've seen 6-year-olds, they're moving the mask all the time, which totally negates any sort of potential benefit. So if kids aren't gonna wear them properly and the cloth mask is basically a joke, then why subject them to this kind of submissive kind of cloth face diaper?
All right, so you're incorrect on the data. So let me go ahead and correct that data. First off, the data that you're citing is what we call an outlier data set.
Okay.
92% of the field of actual research scientists agree that masks decrease the spread of COVID. As a matter of fact, the only deviation from that agreement is by how much. The lowest end is 10%, the highest is 91%.
Can I ask a question about that?
I get to,
yeah.
Give me 1 second, brother.
You got it.
All right, so University of California, they have a study and they posted this just a few days ago, and if anybody wants to read it, it's called Still Confused About Mask, okay? One of the lab studies that they highlighted showed in a high-speed camera scenario, respiratory droplets. This is how the virus travels with the viral load. Those respiratory droplets were found within 20 to 500 micrometers, that's your size. They were generated from saying a simple phrase. So just talking to somebody creates a viral load 20 to 500 micrometers, right? Having a cloth in front of your mouth decreased it by virtually 100%. Now, that flies in the face of individuals who say, well, cloth masks do nothing. And remember, cloth masks are also now recommended for public use by the CDC and the World Health Organization. So when you say they do absolutely nothing, even the data that you cite that says it doesn't do as much is at 10% effectiveness. The other data, that's the majority of the data, says it does it at 80 to 90% effectiveness.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding your position. Your position is that, first of all, does that study factor in whether they wear the mask correctly or not? Whether that they're touching the mask all the time and they're moving it? Does that study factor for that?
This study factors for droplets that are transmitted.
Okay. And that's fine.
But think about it,
But I
Charlie.
mean, a 7-year-old's not going to not touch their face and move the
brother,
mask.
think about it. Your issue, the argument you're making with me is an argument of education. That means that young people have to be more educated. I'm a former high school teacher. All right, there are high school students that may not wear the mask properly. There are grown folks that don't wear the mask properly.
Well, that's part of the argument.
The issue then is education and proper wearing of the mask. You're literally making my argument for me.
That's part of the argument. The other argument,
you're making my argument saying if you wear it properly, then it does in fact decrease the spread of COVID.
But they don't, and they won't, and you know that. You're dealing with 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. The other part of the argument, though, is that it actually makes us unfamiliar with one another, harder to communicate. It stunts childhood development. So I want to read some of these numbers, and I want to ask you: do you think that masking children forcibly is going to help the 90% increase in suicide that we saw through March from that 2019 to 20? Is it going to help the nearly doubling of mental health issues or the 333.9% increase in intentional self-harm claim lines?
You're blaming all that on masks?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking you a question. Is that going to help or hurt America's mental health crisis?
Let's be very clear, brother, because I want to understand exactly what you're asking. Are you saying that a kid wearing a mask and adjusting to a new social norm yields this result?
No, I'm asking you.
No, it doesn't yield that result.
Okay.
There's nothing in the data set that says.
All right, okay, so you think that masks have no impact whatsoever, potentially in mental health?
Brother, I just answered that question and told you they do have an impact, but COVID-19 has even a stronger impact
what makes you
on
say
our
that?
social development. Because the risk of death, brother,
is so low for children.
No, brother, no. Let me tell you where I come from. When we talk about children, Charlie, we're not talking about a silo of just kids in an educational system. We're talking about kids that are connected to a greater community. I come from a community where this COVID-19 virus, brother, has ravaged the black community. And it's not just because children wear masks or don't wear masks. It's because of other variables such as healthcare inequity, etc. But if you look at children and just say, well, the mask thing is the only thing. It's not just that. We don't want young kids going back to infecting parents and grandparents. And if it's such a bad idea, Charlie, are you disagreeing with over 60% of Americans who care about their children? You can't say these folks don't care about their children. And they are saying in all of the survey data that we want mask mandates for our children so they can be safe. What do you say to those parents that say that?
I have a difference of opinion. And by the way, thankfully, we have a system. Just because you have 60% of opinion doesn't mean it necessarily only becomes law. We'll get to I want to get to the civil rights thing in a second, but it's or it becomes precedent or it gets implemented or whatever it is. So as I mentioned, the New York Times said that COVID, you have a higher chance of dying from flu and pneumonia, drowning, cardiovascular disease, suicide, homicide, vehicle accidents. So to be consistent, per 100,000 for children, right?
Okay.
Are you okay with banning driving?
So let's go to this. I'm okay with making sure kids have a set of prerequisites in order to drive. Which,
how about
by
being
the
a
way,
passenger?
Wait a minute. By the way, that's already the law. Children do not get to drive just because they turn a certain age. They have to get a learner's permit, go through a training process in order to get their license. And why do we do that, Charlie? We do that because we know that driving is dangerous. That's why we do that, right?
Well, also being a passenger in a car as well. I'm just saying,
brother, everything to some level has a danger, right?
If your view is to make safety a priority over liberty, then I'm just asking you, because that is really the question, right?
No.
Do you have the liberty to be as God made you without a mask? right?
God made you without clothes. You got clothes on.
Well, and we wear clothes for a reason. We know
Well,
the biblical reason for that.
It's the law, and you will be charged with indecent exposure.
God also gave us a face for a reason, be able to interact and empathize, to communicate, so I can see your expressions. Let me ask you a question.
Charlie,
do you think this debate would be better or worse if we had masks on?
It'll be the same for me.
Really? You think so?
Let me tell you something, brother.
That's interesting.
I teach college classes and lecture with a mask on. All of my students have masks. I go to law school. We all have masks on. My professor has a mask as well. And I've actually been in schools when schools first started back where masks were required. And let me tell you something about real teachers. School teachers are able to teach with a mask on and without a mask. It's called pedagogy. And some of the really good teachers, they're able to translate the message of the mask into their curriculum. But once again, you're avoiding something that's huge and right in our face. Is the benefit, and this is a question of what you believe, is the benefit of protecting children by saying you do have to wear a mask, you do have to abide by a dress code, you do have to abide by a particular behavior standard. Are those directives inside of a school system to protect the overall and general safety of students? Is that a good idea? I say yes, you say no.
Well, and I think you're coming from a false premise. The data I showed is that they're not at risk and considerably from the Delta variant.
Silo thinking, brother. You're not thinking about their families or
communities or nothing else. The data I showed that they don't even wear the masks. The data I also shows, well, again, 2%
What percentage of kids do not wear the mask properly?
I don't have data on that, but if you've ever been around a 6-year-old, they don't wear anything properly. They eat dirt.
Let me tell you something, man.
Let alone wear a mask properly.
Charlie, and I mean this in all due respect. I've been inside of school systems recently that did the let's come back thing and let's wear masks and let's socially distance. Those kids were well behaved. They did not take the mask off. They adhered to it.
Even if a 2% adjustment, doctor, 2%. Well, it changes everything.
Well, it changes it based on the research that I have from 90% effectiveness, and it can lower down to 10%. All right, you got a lot of wiggle room in between that. No scientist says that wearing a cloth mask is ineffective. They just argue on the effectiveness with the majority of the science and majority of the data saying it is well over 50% effective.
That's not true. There's a study out of Denmark that shows there's almost no increase.
One study, brother.
So see, that's a good question. I'm going to get to that in a second. What happens when you have different studies? What happens when the body of evidence contradicts? Because that's an important question, right?
I think that's a great question.
Because how do you govern oneself when you have, I have this study, I have that study, but I just want to make sure that the people watching can see where I'm coming from my perspective. So let me just say kind of one other point on this where you said that, am I willing to make adjustments for child safety? And you kind of asked, that was the open-ended question, where I say it's not about that at all. In fact, the downside, in my opinion, far outweighs any sort of benefit, especially when Dr. Macri, who said, he studied right here, he studied 43,000 children with COVID and was not able to find a single death. Now you say it's also a transmission issue. Dr. Macri also said that children, quote, are not significant carriers or super spreaders to adults.
Okay,
so,
wow.
So we're gonna have study collision, so go ahead.
So let's talk about study collision. Once again, outlier data. What that doctor just quoted to say that children are not carriers of COVID-19 is outlier data, because over 90% of the field agrees, based on research and study, that kids are carriers of not only COVID, but of any virus. And you literally just made that argument with me. You literally just said, Charlie, that kids do not properly wear their mask and they're spreading things by not properly wearing their mask. You have made the
That was not my argument. I said if your argument was true and masks worked, it would only be true if every child was a perfect automaton mask wearing student, which of course we know is not true.
Do seatbelt mandates work?
Of course they do.
Does everyone wear one?
Do you know what's amazing about a seatbelt?
Charlie, does everyone wear a seatbelt?
After you're in a car accident, it doesn't give you natural immunity from getting in another car accident.
Brother,
that's what makes this totally different.
Does everyone wear a seatbelt, Charlie?
Of course not.
Do we then go back and unravel, because only 49 states have seatbelt laws. Do we go back and unravel the 49 state statutes, because there are some people who will either A, not wear them, or B, actually die because of them? We don't do that, Charlie, because we see the benefit of wearing that safety belt. That protocol far outweighs anything else.
So I've not been convinced. by.
And let's talk about the data. Let's talk about the data.
Because we're gonna collide on data.
Okay.
But let me ask you a question. When it comes to driving and safetyism, do you think we should bring speed limits down to 20 miles an hour, which would definitely save lives? Is that a good handoff?
Yeah. So let me get back to that. It used to be 15 miles per hour, by the way.
Is that okay with you? Because that would prioritize safety over liberty.
Well, I think you always weigh it. But let me answer your first question. I'll get back to that one. You talked about conflict in data, right?
Yeah, like what happens when I have a study? I have a study. What do we do?
That's right. So here's what happens. Science, a lot of people misinterpret what science is. They say science is a fact. Science is not a fact. Science is a field of study. Now, there are some things that are scientific facts, like gravity, okay? But science is a field of study. And I do think sometimes scientists do themselves an injustice when they do not describe science as such. It is a field of study. Now, what does that field of study mean? It means you study the field. So what's the field of science? All of these research surveys, these research, these laboratory experiments, these real world research experiments, that's the field of study. And so for you and I, who are reading the data from these experts, what we typically depend on is what is the majority sentiment? What is the consensus among the scientist community? And that is how we start to derive our conclusions based on the research that we're able to analyze independently as independent thinking individuals. Now, you can still believe an outlier study if you choose. It is contrary to the majority of the science that's available for review, but that is still within your right as an American, right? So that is how you do it. You're gonna always have clashing opinions and conclusions, but literally in research, there's no 50-50 here. There's not 50% of the scientists are saying this and 50% of the scientists are saying that. Literally, you're giving me 7% of what scientists are saying compared to 92, 93% of what other scientists are saying. That's the argument that you're making with me, Charlie.
And I'm always fascinated by the 7% because they're willing to buck the consensus and pursue things that they have found in the scientific method to be true. And so I guess this is an important question. Then we'll get into what do we do when we have these differences, because that we're going to keep on going in circles of study versus study. And I'm going to say, well, according to this doctor, for example, as I'll say, Dr. Daron, Delta variant not severe in children. And then I'll say Dr. DeBazzi said the same thing, and Dr. Macri, and you'll say, well, the CDC said this. I guess I'll ask you a question.
Which are a lot of doctors.
Well, let me ask you a question. The CDC contradicted themselves on masks. They contradicted themselves on vaccines. They contradicted themselves on COVID being on surfaces. Remember, they said it could be there up to 5 days. We know that not to be true. They contradicted themselves on almost everything. If they've been wrong on the science of 90% of doctors, why should we trust them now?
You know, that's really interesting because you trust them, don't you?
It depends on what issue.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah. So
you trust them depending on what issue. That is called confirmation bias. So Charlie.
Well, it depends on the issue. If they're talking about, Newton's second law, then I'll trust them on that.
They don't talk about that. The issue with the CDC is not about you discrediting all the scientists. Now, I'll take it back to one variable you just named. The COVID, the survival time of the virus, right?
Yeah, like is COVID able to be on this table for 5 days?
Right. Initially, there were scientists that came out and said, hell, it can be up there for 18 days. Well, in certain environments it can, because that was based on a ship crew, a cruise ship, where the virus was still there after
the Princess
15
cruise
days.
ship.
That's right, brother. It was there after 15 days. Everybody was evacuated. They cleaned that ship top to bottom, and they still found active virus on the ship. So they came out and said, hey, listen, we're still learning this thing. We are connecting it to the field of study, which is called science. And we want you to be warned that we have active virus cultures still on this ship, and no one infected has been here for over 15 days. They reported that. And then people ran with it and said, oh my goodness, this thing survives for all of these days. But that was in a particular environment, and that environment was conducive to the growth and the preservation of that virus. That's context, that's important.
So you mentioned outliers. You know, those of us that are trying to answer the question, what do we do about this? I'm fascinated by outliers. Outliers in science sometimes end up being true. In fact, we've seen this. You know, we were told that it was a conspiracy theory, that it came from a lab. Well, that's kind of the prevailing wisdom now. It definitely didn't come from some bat in the Himalayas. It's looking more and more like it came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It also used to be an outlier to say that we revolve around the sun. The heliocentric theory of gravitational pull, as authored by Galileo, used to be an outlier in science. Newton's first, second, and third law, the idea that an object at rest will stay at rest, the idea that there's force equals mass times acceleration, these things had to be eventually investigated and proven. I'll give you another example. It used to be scientific consensus that eugenics was good and the sterilization of women would improve humanity. Now, those are some extreme examples. I understand. But the point is that sometimes what if these studies are right? Do you ever wonder, what if there's some truth here?
Do you ever wonder what if the majority of scientists are telling the truth?
Well, of course. I mean, I entertain it and I dismiss it on issue by issue. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Like a majority of scientists right now are saying that we have to entertain another round of lockdowns in certain parts of the country or the world to try to stop the virus. I think that's a big mistake. I mean, I'll listen to anything that they say.
Well, you may think that's a big mistake, but you're saying that based on a socioeconomic factor.
Well, I also could say it
scientific.
I could also say it epidemiologically, right? So let's look at Israel and Sweden, right? Israel was held up as this like beautiful country, mass inoculation. They've now gone through their 4th lockdown. They're on their 4th booster shot. Sweden, that probably had the most mature and prudent response to the virus, is wide open, and Sweden has now banned Israeli citizens from coming into Sweden. And so I don't need, a PhD in epidemiology to say, hey, whatever decisions they were making in Sweden seemed far more prudent than what they were doing in Israel. And I suppose this is the question, which is you have this multitude of studies, many of these, the consensus that was put forward. So let's go back in time. Dr. Ronnie Jackson last year said, do not wear a mask. People, stop wearing masks. And now we're mask crazy. That was a contradiction, right? Remember they said that at first that children might be at risk. That was a conjecture. That was not necessarily a policy. We now know it to be different. The point is that we should always be entertaining the minority opinion in science, right?
All right, brother.
And honestly, that minority opinion has ended up being true almost every time.
No, sir. No, sir. The minority opinion has said some pretty extreme things. You have a minority opinion of people who believe that the earth is still flat.
Well, I'm not one of those people.
I understand that.
I do believe in a circular earth that can be proven in a variety of different ways.
But remember, you have some people that are willing to die by that sentiment. They are so dogmatic about the earth, right? And that's a scientific factor. That's earth science. Just because the data or the proclamation is an outlier does not mean it's true.
But calling Dr. Daron a flat earther is a little extreme.
That's not, come on, brother.
She's an epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center.
You know good and damn well.
But you're kind of conflating those two things, is what I'm not presenting
from
flat
the
earth
extreme examples you just gave.
Very fair.
That's
fine.
Okay, so let's go to some simple things we learned about infectious diseases. Like you, I've interviewed a lot of infectious disease doctors, right? Some of them have been all across the United States, and now they're right here, or all across the globe, and now they're right here in the United States trying to fight this thing. Do you and I agree that masks decrease the spread of COVID? Do we agree on that fundamental basic premise?
It's questionable. I would only agree if it's a certain type of mask that is worn absolutely properly, that followed the exact laboratory guidelines. If and only then, I would say maybe, which almost no human being outside of a controlled, sterilized laboratory environment is wearing a mask that way.
How do you wear a mask properly?
By not touching it, not adjusting it, according to, again, Stephen Petty, one of the most certified experts in industrial hygienicist. He says that even if 2% of the mask area is open, 80% of the particles under 2.5 microns will escape.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
Now, what area is he talking about, Charlie?
It could be the top or the bottom of the mask.
Right.
I'm not exactly
your mouth
sure
or your nose.
The terminology.
So if your mouth or your nose is exposed, then it decreases the impact of what the mask.
That's not what he said.
Okay, go ahead.
But again, I'm not.
What did he say?
I'm not gonna profess, to be
read it again,
a lifelong, student of mask wearing.
But brother, read it again.
Okay, I'm gonna finish it though.
Okay.
Right? 2% of the mask area open, 80% of the particles under 2.5 microns will escape.
Okay.
And he says that masks will be 100% ineffective. He says in blocking any particles that small when the open area reaches 3.2%. And he also says that if it's even adjusted by 4%, a small adjustment, it could end it all. And also, you know this, you could contaminate yourself. Not to mention, Dr. Macri says that if you wear the masks, you could actually be reinfecting yourself, and it lowers oxygen levels. So there are some things to say that
that's
masks,
that's really interesting. Okay,
and I'm citing other people again.
Right, I got you.
And then we'll go into what we do about it, because I think that's interesting.
That is a Minority Report. So let me take you back to what he's referencing.
Okay,
he's referencing having the mask not covering your pie hole. All right, that's what he's referencing. The way it spreads through droplets primarily is through your mouth and through your nose. Once again, I cite the study highlighted by the University of California that found in a high-speed camera, 20 to 500 micrometers were generated from a simple phrase, hello, goodbye, good to see you, okay? That simple phrase had thousands inside of those droplets. That's your viral load. A cloth mask, not one that is required for medical personnel.
N95 or whatever.
Right. Not that one. Just as a matter of fact, in the study, brother, they used a cloth towel, a wash towel, in order to show that any covering is in fact effective.
So now this is the most important question, right?
Okay.
So half the country's on your couch, half the country's on my couch. It might be less than that. According to you, it's 60%, right? So then the question is, how do we govern ourselves, right, if we have differences of opinions on things that are constantly changing and confusing? Wouldn't the right answer be allow a parent and the child to make that decision outside of what a school district might want to do against their will? Shouldn't we always resort towards parental rights in situations like this?
Let me ask you this, Charlie. Let's say we use the same standard for dress codes in school systems. That is not about what the policy is. It's about what the parent and the child wants to do. Would that be okay with you?
Well, first of all, I think that a certain level of a dress code, I think, is just actually really good for childhood development. I would argue, I'm actually very pro dress code. I would love to have kids wear shirts and ties. So I think there could be an objective argument made that they'll pay more attention. But you can't make that argument for masks. You even said there's a downside. I don't think that if all of a sudden you said, hey, the nicer you dress, the worse the environment. It's the opposite.
There is a psychological downside, and various studies prove it.
To dress like you?
No, man.
See, if kids dress like you
can't dress like me, brother.
I know, but if kids dressed like you, everyone would be smarter.
So
right?
let me say this, Charlie. There are studies, and listen, man, I have a doctorate in education. There are studies that show education is not just for academic achievement. It's also for social development. And there comes a time, especially in a teenager's life, where they would like to express themselves socially through their attire. I'm actually more liberal as it relates to attire, right? I don't like dress codes as they are.
See, I'm more conservative. I kind of like it.
I understand the decency
as I
structure,
wear a t-shirt,
right?
You know,
but the issue is we can't create a standard that says we're willing to put your life in danger or your child in danger because you have a personal issue with the school policy. And remember, once again, the vast majority of Americans are for the mask mandate policy.
So let's just go to this. First of all, I think it's somewhat of a red herring argument because some parents don't like to send their kids to private school because they have a dress code, so there's some choice there. I guess what I'm saying, though, is that you support a school board coming into the school and saying every child must wear the mask. Why not make it optional? Because here's what happens, is that some parents are going to yield to my opinion. Some parents will yield to your opinion. Isn't the right decision just to let parents choose?
I think the right decision is to allow the elected representatives who were elected by those parents to enact administrative law, to make common sense policies to protect the children, and for them to listen to the science as it's collected locally. I don't believe it's the right idea to do what DeSantis has did in Florida, which is to make a mask mandate ban, which, by the way, 70% of Republicans disagree with his ban on mask mandates and defunding school systems who are in opposition to his executive action. And a judge recently ruled that Governor DeSantis, that DeSantis in Florida was without legal authority when he used an executive order to limit a governmental entity that exists by statute. If you want to start making executive orders to restrict other governmental agencies, go through statutory processes through your legislature.
So let me ask you a question. First of all, I love what DeSantis did, and I love the idea
but it's
of
illegal.
Coming in. Well, there was a judge that is rehearing. I think he actually just won on that, but I will yield to this, that there was an Iowa decision that just said where a judge said what happened in Iowa was unconstitutional. So there are a lot of rulings there. I will give you that it's an open-ended question. But what DeSantis is doing is actually the anti of mandates. He's telling every student in Florida, you have, as a taxpayer, a moral right to be able to choose. And you want to talk about local government. You're talking about local government, right? You know what the ultimate local government is? A parent and child. There's nothing more local than that.
Well, thank you for saying that, because once again, the vast majority of them are for mask mandates.
Then let them mask their kid and let the other parents not mask their kids, right?
Once again, just because their child has a mask, right? It doesn't mean the child next to them will have one. And what is COVID? What are the masks for? The mask is for the decrease, primarily for the decrease of COVID, the decrease of the spread. I want to read some stats, man, because we've been all over the place. Most Americans are for the vaccine requirement. This is a Gallup poll that came out very recently.
So you want to do vaccines? That's fine.
Okay.
Happy to go into that.
All right, let's go to vaccines quickly. 54% of Americans support vaccine requirements in workplace settings. 53% report that they're for them even if you're dining out. They want you to have a vaccine passport. 61% of Americans would like to have that for air travel. We don't have that yet. You can still travel without a vaccine
Some
card,
restaurants are starting to do it.
But I'm talking about travel. For travel, we don't have that. Canada is implementing that in the fall. Other countries are going to do the same. If you're telling me that the school system, just think about this, and I'm going back to vaccines. If you're telling me that the school system has the legal authority to mandate various vaccinations, that's a needle going into the body of a child. They have the authority to mandate that, but they do not have the authority to mandate a mask. That is intellectually dishonest. Either the school board has the authority to mandate vaccines and masks, or it is all governmental intrusion.
Are you talking about measles, mumps, and rubella? Or are you talking
and
about?
Some children have adverse effects of those vaccines.
I would actually be more on parental rights to that, but I'm not going to. The courts have ruled differently. My personal right would be that children should be able to go to school without the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. That's my own personal opinion.
Are you against vaccine mandates as a principle?
It depends on what you're talking about with that, right? Are you talking about the current one that's being called a vaccine with a changing definition of a vaccine,
so
right?
You have an issue with COVID?
Well,
with
COVID do I have an issue with the one that was put on the marketplace without the usual 10 to 15 years of study and the peer-reviewed studies and the explosion of various responses?
10 to 15 years later, you will agree with me.
Well, we'll see.
That's what you're saying?
I don't know. The issue here is prudence, right? Is how are we going to use practical judgment to see what's in front of us and ask ourselves the question, should we use force to all of a sudden say to a family, you know what? Doesn't matter about all these studies that may very well might be a small percentage of doctors, but you know what's so great about science? It's not an up or down vote. We don't vote on Newton's third law. So if there's not 100% consensus, it is an open question, and you have to keep on going through it in a scientific method.
Follow the data.
Well, the data can send you in different directions, as we've shown. We're not going to. We're asking ourselves, what do we do? So my opinion is that when things are confusing, unclear, and you have contradiction, yield to rights. Let people choose. Don't use force.
All right, man. That's a funny argument to me. Let me tell you why. There's a lot of disagreement about voting. Okay, you got state legislatures, they have passed laws saying you need to do A, B, and C in order to vote. You can't vote by way of absentee without having this prerequisite. It's all over the place. There is no federal uniform to voting, right?
Then well, there is some. There is the Civil Rights Act. That's not true.
Yeah, but
which is very specific.
The Voting Rights Act, I think, is what you're referring to. The Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court a few years ago, who set it aside and said the United States Congress needs to now handle this statutorily, which is the reason why southern states like Georgia, Mississippi, and others do not have to seek pre-clearance from the Department of Justice in order to change the electorate rules in their state. Before the Supreme Court set aside the Voting Rights Act, they would have to get pre-clearance from the DOJ in order to change voting rules in their state.
So before we get to voting, can you complete the point though? Because you were trying to connect voting with COVID.
Texas, they passed a law. They passed this legislative standard that said constitutional carry. You're familiar with that?
Big fan of it.
All right. I'm glad you're a big fan of constitutional carry, right? Because it says you do not need a prerequisite in order to get a gun. No license, no government bureaucracy, no ID, no permit, no nothing. Constitutional carry. Because bearing arms is what? A constitutional right.
Yes.
Correct? Boom. I'm good with that. 100%. Is voting a right?
Depends on if you're a felon or not.
But it is a right, because if you're a felon, you can't have a gun either.
Yeah, that's the question, right? So like an extreme libertarian would say that we should allow felons to vote, we should allow people to vote. Voting is a right, absolutely, but it becomes not a right when it's not secure. You agree with that? You don't want to all of a sudden question your elections.
So let me now pose this to you constitutionally. You have the right to bear arms.
Yes.
That right can be limited. You have to age into that right based on the state law.
Yes.
Okay. You also can have that right taken away from you based on your criminal activity.
Felon, as we agree on.
Right.
Yep.
But you do agree it's a right.
Yes, but look, rights are conditional under the current agreement we've made with our government, where the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, there are exceptions. I think there's far too many exceptions.
But
I yield to rights most of the time.
Okay, let's yield to rights on this. And this is the point I'm making to you. If you're a big fan of constitutional carry,
yes,
meaning no ID, no permit, no bureaucracy.
I think that's an oversimplification of the Texas law.
No, the Texas law says you don't need nothing. As a matter of fact,
you just said felons can't buy the guns then. How do they know if they're a felon?
Exactly, brother.
But
exactly. That's my point. Constitutional carry.
I think you're misunderstanding,
Charlie. I've researched this up and down.
The Texas law.
Constitutional carry does not require a prerequisite. You can just get a gun, carry it, and no law enforcement agent can ask you for a permit. Nobody. You can walk around with your gat.
I understand the point you're making. You say if you want to have laissez-faire policy on guns, then why don't you want to have laissez-faire policy on voting? Is that the question you're making?
Here's the point I'm making.
I don't know how that relates to COVID.
I'm about to help you, brother. If you believe in constitutional carry,
yes.
Why don't you believe in constitutional voting?
Well, I do, which means voter ID and secure.
But no
people.
ID for guns.
You know
no permit for guns. No ID for guns.
The problem
with
voting.
For voting.
Let me tell you why. Voting is how we build our government.
I thought
you don't.
guns is
let me
how
finish.
You defend your government.
It's true. That's also true. Which is why we should have widespread gun ownership, and we should be able to protect ourselves against a usurpatious government. Let me build this out.
All right. And I'll finish my point. I'm going to make the connection.
I don't know how it gets to COVID, but it's interesting. Okay. But voting is how we express our values and put people in positions of power. And if there's any question in the efficacy, the integrity, the transparency, and how those elections are done, the entire system falls apart. Which is why I believe in transparent and fair elections. And this idea that Georgia somehow has oppressive voter laws, they have 18 days of early voting, way more than Delaware has. They allow Sunday voting, which is souls to the polls, which is I'm sure something you're very well aware with. So that's a misinterpretation of that. So I do believe in constitutional voting, which is leave it to the states. Let the states do what they want to do with voting, and that goes with gun laws as well as voter laws.
All right, so let me make the connection, okay? Constitutional carry in Texas, no ID, no permit.
Again, I think you're oversimplifying that law because there's also, let me tell you why. There are federal laws like the Brady Bill in 1986 that says that felons cannot buy weapons, that the federal agents are able to get subpoenas against weapons. You're oversimplifying it.
No, I'm not. I'm not oversimplifying the Texas law. The Texas law says we're not going to check a damn thing if you're walking around this state with a gun.
Right,
That's the Texas law.
Which I have no problem with. That's a separate thing of acquiring the weapon, right?
Now, you have no problem. Well, remember, you can purchase a gun from a private dealer without showing an ID. They don't have to require that.
So you call that the gun show loophole. That's been largely misrepresented, but let's pretend you're right. Finish the argument because we have to take a 10-second break in just a second, but just finish your argument.
Let me make this quick. Constitutional carry, all good. Voting is a right. Constitutional voting, wait a minute, y'all need IDs now.
I'm big into constitutional voting.
Okay, all right, now here's the final point. Everything we're talking about as far as regulatory agencies, mandates for vaccines or masks or protocols for COVID-19 is derived from the Constitution. There are two dynamics that the Constitution allows.
No, I never said it was unconstitutional. It might be. I said it's wrong.
Wait a minute, but if
That's
you
two
believe,
different things.
Listen,
there's plenty of things that are constitutional that are wrong.
Charlie.
Not everything that is constitutional
listen to
is
my
right.
point, brother. If you believe in the Constitution, Why do you dismiss Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, or the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which gives states and gives regulatory agencies and gives school boards these particular powers? These powers are expressions. But they're expressions of the Constitution.
No, but I say they're wrong to do it, not that they don't have a right to do it.
Okay.
That's two totally different things.
So you're making a moral argument
I have been the whole time.
against kids wearing a mask to school.
Yes, not only that, I'm making a moral argument of imposing oneself into a parent's decision to either have their child wear a mask or not. That's been my argument the whole time.
But
I have not made a constitutional argument. You know why I haven't made a constitutional argument? It's because the courts are open on this discussion. But
the Constitution is not.
Again, it depends on states' constitution, depends on precedents, courts' decisions.
You know the law of reciprocation.
But hold on a second.
State cannot override.
Courts change their minds all the time. We had Dred Scott, praise God, we reversed that. We had the forced sterilization of women in the 1920s, praise God, we reversed that. We had Jim Crow, praise God, we reversed that.
Right, but that wasn't in the Constitution.
Some people said,
Jim Crow was not in the Constitution.
Well, but now they used the 10th Amendment to justify it.
Well, they used the states' rights clause.
Right, which is your argument right now, in a bizarre way.
No.
Yeah.
They use a states' rights clause and perverted the statute. So we've always had those who mishandled statutory legislation. That's something commonplace.
No, I'm making a moral argument. I had the whole time. And an argument about childhood development.
I get it. But Charlie, you're literally disagreeing with the damn parents. The data shows that over 60% of the parents.
What about the 40%? So you are, let me just make sure I'm clear. We have to take a 10-second break.
Okay.
You are okay with saying the 60% of parents can use force against 40% of parents?
They can use a mandate, yes. They can use a mandate for vaccines. They can use a mandate for dress codes. They can use a mandate for that.
So let me ask you this question. If 60% of Americans wanted to take rights away from black Americans, is that okay?
That's a dumbass argument.
Why?
And let me tell you why.
Because that's the argument they used to make for Jim Crow.
Sir,
is a democratic argument.
And it was an evil argument back then.
I agree.
And let me be clear. We're talking about the safety of children and mask mandates inside of a local school system that the majority of taxpaying Americans actually agree with. So you're in the minority here.
We have clarity. I don't believe just because a majority of people believe something, they should be able to punish the other side.
But on this case, I'm with them.
I want to give you this opportunity just to kind of make your closing argument and kind of summarize it all together.
Man, let me say this, brother. I don't want to make a closing argument to argue with you.
Whatever,
I want to say this to you. You are a brilliant mind.
Thank you.
What you're doing here, thank you. What you're doing here is going to provide clarity. We don't have to agree. The push and pull of the republic or the democracy, whatever you want to call it, all right, is based on open, free, transparent, and authentic dialogue. And even though I disagree with you about 90% of the time, you are authentic in what you believe. And brother, I go to war for you any day.
Oh, well, thank you. And this sort of discussion is exactly what makes America special, and to be able to disagree and still figure out kind of what we're doing. So we're going to take it. If you guys want to watch the rest of this Charlie Kirk Show podcast, hit subscribe on the Turning Point USA feed. That's it for today. Go to the Charlie Kirk Show, and we're going to be back with more.